9th of October, nearly the end of the month. We head into Paris soon and then fly out tomorrow to Cape Town. So we won't be on with a tracker update tomorrow morning. And we should be up on Monday morning, but I think we get in 2 o'clock in the morning and on Monday morning, and then get to the apartment and stuff, and then we'll see how we go. But we should be up on Monday morning. So all kind of interesting now. As we suggested, it's going to get very confusing with the weather. The leaderboard hasn't changed. Everything's still Simon, followed by Tapio, followed by Abelish, followed by Pat, followed by Kirsten. So, but we're on this sort of scale just to show you these holes that are popping up. It gets very hard to predict in terms of weather graphics exactly what's going on here, because remembering that the big picture, the only weather information that is available comes from floating buoys drifting around the ocean here. There's a lot of them, but not too many. You know, if you're doing forecasting on land somewhere, then there's various land stations that are feeding in the statistics and data like barometric pressure and cloud cover and wind direction strength. But down here, it's pretty much only coming from these random floating buoys going up into the system by satellite and then into computer programs and various modelling to come up with the forecast. So if we then once again look at this, you can see, I mean, how do you predict these little holes here and so on with any real accuracy? And that explains a bit about what's going on. So it's a generalization. These sort of gradients here are a bit easier to predict on the computer models because there's a pressure gradient between it. But once you get this big open hole like this, there's not a lot of pressure readings to read, and there's a lot more assumptions on where these areas of zero wind are compared to a little bit of wind. Anyway, if we look at Simon, he's still managing 4.3 knots, and he's heading up a bit, but this wind is showing it's coming from behind, and I doubt whether that means he's heading up. So he's obviously got something a little bit different, and this stuff's moving quite fast, you know, over the lot of them to a degree. So Abelish has got 5.8 knots, but you can see it suggests he's sitting in 0 knots. Okay, and that tells you that either modeling's not quite right, or it's moving so fast that in the last 4 hours he had breeze, and now when this snapshot was done, he's got no breeze. Tapio's doing 4.9 knots. Pat is doing 3 knots, but it looks as if he's got more wind than Abelish, and Kirsten looks pretty cool there at 5.1 knots. Damien is showing a light headwind, which he probably hasn't got, but he's only doing 1.4 knots average over the previous 4 hours, and so he had something really slow and simple coming over him with wind, and that slowed him down. Not sure what's going on with Captain Goog here, because 5.2 knots excuse me, either way he should be getting this breeze excuse me, should be getting this breeze on the beam, and this might be a case of going to sleep and thinking the boat's sailing really well, and he wouldn't be on the opposite tack, but he could be. I mean, I would still be wanting to get south, because remember, this is 30 degrees south here. This is the roaring 40s, and really you want to be down there, because here's Cape Town. You don't need to be up there, and generally the further south you are, the better average weather you're going to get for going to Cape Town. So everyone's still a little bit high at the moment. I thought Kirsten was heading down, but she's got some headwinds here. She doesn't want to go backwards, so she's on starboard tack still and trying to hold there. But there's Cape Town. Remember, they really need to be down here somewhere. Let's see where that plays out. That's why I'm not sure what Goog's doing going up here. Urton's doing okay, heading down 3.9 knots. He might be holding a bit up into the weather here, like the wind forward of the beam, just because he knows he's got to get down, you know. Anyway, this might start to make a bit more sense if we look at how fast some of these holes are going. That's only a few hours ahead. That's this afternoon, and you can see these holes are already moving out to the northeast. And again, if we come through to the 30th, which is tomorrow night-ish, everyone's starting to get breeze, but it's from the wrong way, because this is the high. That might look a bit better if I go smaller, and I'll go back again, and you can see what happens, how this is getting squeezed up from these systems down the bottom here, and there's a high forming up below them. Okay, so that one's going to be the dominant high, and this is a residual bit hanging out. Okay, so see that one coming up from underneath them. We come forward a bit, and it's already moving out. It's formed up into a distinct easy high. These other fluffy bits have moved back, and they're getting squashed out by this one, and that's going to be the dominant high now. So we go through the end of Monday, and you can see very distinct. And what I was saying, you can see, I mean, now you're on the wrong side of it. You really need to be down here into the 40s. And, anyway, when they get there, let's see what they do. But they'll be a bit forward ahead then. They'll be in this lot. It'll be light. And now it's a race to try and work out what's happening. They'll know where the centre is. It squashes out. But again, you get the wrong side there. Oh, it's even I'm watching this for the first time now. Okay, that's not so bad when you're there. The only problem is if you keep coming down on this side, right, you're gonna not be in an ideal position. So I would, if you were sailing down the 40th parallel here, you'd still be looking okay until this last bit. But it's easy for me to say that because I'm not in a boat sitting out there bobbing around with the guys with not much weather reporting and wondering what to do next. But I think you can see the trend, and certainly these strong southeasters here, if they get the wrong side of it, boom, and here's the trick to try and break through that later on. So still interesting things to watch. We'll come back to real-time weather now, and we'll watch what happens to the back of the fleet here. Whoops, daisy. My mouse is not doing the right things. Okay, so that's today's weather. Arnaud doing okay, 5.3 knots, right on track, getting down south. Ian Herbert Jones, 3.1. Again, he can't really go any other way. He could go this way, but he knows he's got to get down as well. Guy's on his way to Punta del Este in Uruguay, which is all a bit sad. But if you listen to the phone recording on SoundCloud, you'll see what he's up against. And it wasn't just a casual conversation. He would have been pondering that for a day or so, thinking, what the hell's going on? He knew they were there. They're growing rapidly. They're beyond the point of coming off easily. They have like this scale footprint that they make on a smooth surface, and then once they get onto that and start growing, it's really hard because the base is so strong, the top is so squishy and flexible. You put your scraper on it and they just bend and squish, and then when the boat's bobbing up and down in a swell and you're underneath trying to hold your breath, you get banged by the boat all the time. It's really very challenging, and I know he's a bit disappointed he's not in the hunt up in this fleet here. So a very tricky decision. Opinions are that if you're going back this way and you're going to Punta del Este, yes, Chichester class is an option, but it's a long way down, 1,600 miles down here to Punta del Este, and then to go back again. Let's wait and see what happens. It'll be a tricky. It'll be a tricky decision. I'm trying to get rid of my Chinese software bits here. Tricky decision for Guy, but I would suggest it's not looking good for the future. Now I've lost them. Here they come. Anyway, good luck to Guy, and hope he has a good trip back that direction. Elliot is doing 4 knots. Heading off. He's obviously got this slant here. Eventually this will go over them all, and let's see, it'll head across. Yeah, so it's forming up underneath. That's going to be okay for the guys at the back here, okay for Guy. Elliot will need to make a decision. He's on the wrong side of it, but a couple of days out, even when he's there, it pulls pretty quick. So that's the first. So 2 days away, it's changed, and there's a big lot of breeze there. He should be heading down and looking okay. Now Jeremy is the next trick. He's making 5.4 on this weather, which is probably to be expected, but I know he's got a big barnacle problem. It's not big yet, but he's got a lot of them. They're all over the hull. He's already explained that. It's already difficult for him to try and get those off. They're beyond the small scale size that's easy to get off, and they're going to grow a lot in the next week or so, and then he'll have to try and address that when he gets to Cape Town. So barnacles are still a problem. Interesting subject. We'll do a Q&A session later, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions about anti-fouling and so on, but they've all got different systems, and some are working better than others, and some of it, sailing through it when they hook on, some boats can be infested more than others, so it's a bit of not too much luck, but it's not even across the board, and everyone's got different stuff. So other thing to look at is currents, because I know we're getting into the realm of currents now. You can see here's the fleet right here. These are showing current gratings. I've explained that before. When you're on currents, there's the speed of the color scale along the bottom here, gives you the speed of the currents. So when you've got something looking like this, that's up to 3 knots there. You could be getting 3 knots or more. So you hook onto that. It's interesting. And then this will be the challenge. This is the Agulhas current coming out when they're leaving Cape Town. They've got to decide how they do that. Normally you head straight south. Southeast until you hit the westerlies, and then you head off towards Australia. So that'll be some fun times there as well. They don't have the information that we've got here, but they they can see. You can see by sea state when you're there, when you get into them, but it's a bit of luck at the moment. There's not a lot happening here in terms of nothing to be steering clear of, but as they get here, there's some big ones pushing them through, generally going in that direction to give them a boost as well. Wave height, we've got hit the waves. Okay, so it's pretty mild down there. Again, the colour scale, a metre and a half, maybe 2 meters at times, but it's all pretty benign. And going forward, it's not much changing in the sea state until they get further across. We can scale that across. There's onto the first. They're all sailing in that band of very light wind, but it's coming up behind, and they'll be. It's slowly coming up with the weather. In the days ahead, late next week. So if we now translate that to wind, you'll see, there's a bit of breeze coming up at the end, so the tail ends will get a boost. Okay, that's about it. So thanks for that, and we'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend.